It's your perfect knockout, Samantha Starr, and you're watching Wrestling Road Stories podcast.
Awesome. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. So let's jump right into it and hit us with what you believe is your worst road story.
Oh, we're going to start out with the worst. Just straight out the gate, throwing right at the worst. Okay. So I've never had a road story where I was in bad company. It's just been GPS mishaps more than anything. I took a road trip. Oh, gosh, this was 10 years ago. No, I wouldn't say 10, maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And it was a car full of people. We were leaving from, one came up from South Carolina. They picked me up in North Carolina, and then we picked somebody up in Virginia, and we were headed to our final destination in Pennsylvania. I don't want to say it's the driver or the GPS operator or a combination of all three of us being in the car, but we ended up, it was almost bell time, and we were on the opposite side of the state. I don't know truly what happened, but I remember looking around at the surroundings and saying, this doesn't look like the road that I normally take to get to this promotion. And I was looking and I was like, just trust the process, right? And it got to the point where the GPS was like, you have arrived. And I looked around and I was like, someone's lying to me because we're not there. So we called the promoter and I was like, hey, can you just send me the address again? I just need to double check something. And come to find out, like, where we were from where we needed to be was probably 3.5 hours difference. And it was almost bell time. And the promoter was just like, y'all aren't going to make it. So just go home. So we drove, it was roughly 9 hours to the middle of Pennsylvania, all to be told, hey, you messed up, kid. Why don't you go ahead and head back to the North Carolina that you came from? None of us got paid because we didn't make it to the event. So the entire trip was out of pocket. We spent 18 hours roughly in the car together. We were amicable. That's the thing. Like, nobody was like at each other's throats, like, oh my gosh, you cost me money, or how could you do this to me? How unprofessional. It was all like, we're dumb. What do you do when you put three wrestlers into a car together? And like, we were all just cutting up, having a good time. And I don't know at what point we took a wrong turn. I don't know how we ended up so far off track. But it was one of the ones that I look back on and was like, wow, like that took a whole weekend. Because like we left, it was early in the morning. It was like 9 a.m. on a Saturday. We left at like 9 a.m. from North Carolina, drove all the way there, and then it was like, we have to drive all the way back now. That's awesome. It was exhausting. We didn't get home till like 10 o'clock the next morning just because it's hard. It's hard to drive just straight like that with no motivation. And we were all ashamed. We were all like tucking our head in shame and saying like, what do we say to that?
Brutal, man. Yeah, I used, when I was younger, I loved driving, and then like as I got older, I'm like, man, I really don't care to drive anymore. So even like Tennessee is probably like some of the farthest, maybe Florida. So we're in NC, so like, Florida's 8.5 from where I'm at. Yeah, anything over that, I'm like, man, I don't want to drive. So for you to make the destination trip, get turned away, and then being like, we're just gonna drive back.
Yeah.
Brutal. Yeah. I'm with you.
It was rough. It was the last time that I didn't have an alternate GPS pulled up in the car. I had to double check. That's probably where my trust issues come from, but you live and you learn, right?
I hear you. I will say that, see, the reason why we do the bad road story first is so now we can lighten the mood with a good road story. So what would you say is your best road story?
That's a tough one because I've been on the road for so long, and I've been blessed to be able to take road trips with my mom, who's my best friend, and we've traveled all over the country together. Like, those memories are always so very special to me. I've had some rough road stories with my dad, not the worst, but just had some rough experiences because of the wrestling and the venue, not anything to them. Like my dad and my stepmom Kim, they're absolutely amazing. Best road story. I did take my mom to New Orleans last year. And granted, we flew to New Orleans, but I'm her youngest daughter, but I take care of her. I make sure she's headed in the right direction. We've got our bags, everything's in line. It was for NWA, and we were in New Orleans at Hard Times in November of 2022. And I wanted to go down to Bourbon Street because I had only been there whenever I was like 12 or 13 maybe. So I didn't get the full like experience of Bourbon Street. So I paid for a ridiculously priced Uber for a 20-minute car ride for my mom and I to go to Bourbon Street when I was 30 at the time. She was 60 at the time. So here I am dragging my mom down Bourbon Street, and she's going to kill me for telling y'all this. But this was before any alcohol whatsoever. Like, we were stone cold sober. It was just two blonde girls walking down the street. So where we got dropped off at and actual Bourbon Street were like 2 blocks apart. So we're walking on the in-between. That's not so much of a party, more like a, hey, just throw the trash on that street, that it'll be fine. So we're walking down the street, and it's very historic, right? It's very like, they don't do a lot of renovations unless they absolutely have to. So as we're walking, it's the bricks, like the old-fashioned style, like walkways where it's like made up of bricks or cobblestone, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what happened, but I look back and my mom has fallen into a pile of trash, like piled up bags of trash on like down street or downtown New Orleans. And like her knee ended up in a puddle of something wet. And I'm like, there's a crackhead beside us. And it was like, one guy was so drunk that he couldn't even stand still. So my mom's trying to get up. I'm trying to help her. She's like asking this guy for help up, and he can't even stand still on his own. So it was like, that was embarrassing, but we ended up going to like get a hand grenade, one of the atomic drinks, and sat down and had a good time, and then called a super expensive Uber all the way back. It was just funny. Like, we went to the voodoo shops, and we went and got like I got my nephew one of the alligators heads, like the petrified alligator heads. So it was just a really cool experience to get to like hang out with my mom on Bourbon Street as an adult and have the embarrassing part of she fell into a pile of trash, and she tells on herself. Like, she doesn't hold a secret to save her life. So as soon as it happened, we get back to the show, and it was like, yeah, and I fell in a pile of trash. I'm like, Mom, you don't have to tell people that. Like, I wasn't gonna rat you out, but geez, if you're gonna tell everyone, I'll at least share it on my podcast.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of New Orleans. I've been there a few times myself, and the French Quarter, Bourbon Street. There's actually it's an Omni Hotel on the corner of Bourbon and Canal, and that's where I stay because I'm going to New Orleans. I'm going to Bourbon Street. I would rather just walk down Bourbon, and then when I'm done, just walk back as best as I can and roll in. Yeah, I love that place. Yeah, we do want to get Baby Doll on here, man. Your mom is definitely, I'm a big fan of hers from way back in the day. But yeah, I've met her a few times, and yeah, she's such a great person. So
I love her.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's awesome. So how many siblings do you have? You said you're the baby.
Yeah, I have one older sister.
Okay.
That's it. It's just my sister and myself. But I'm very much like the younger child. So I have my stuff together, so don't like think that I'm spoiled rotten. And I'm very mature. I'm very like responsible. I have a full-time job. I used to own and operate a Sonic drive-in. Like, always been like all my P's and Q's. My mom raised 2 really wonderful daughters, if I do say so myself. But my sister is almost 2 years older than me. She's a year and 9 months and 15 days older than me. Easy math because she was born on January 1st, right?
Gotcha.
So she does her own thing. She's a musician, and she lives in Asheville, North Carolina. So where I went more the sports and like business route, she went more of the free-spirited musician route. So it's pretty cool to watch her do her thing.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
when I first found you, it's probably a few years ago that I ran across you, and I was like, dude, this is so awesome. Like, I immediately knew that I had to like check you out because I'm like, being a fan of your mom's, I was like, she had to produce greatness, and I mean, I'm not wrong there. So I enjoy watching you. Like, we got to see you at I got to see you live at the Crockett Cup. So that was exciting. So I'm hoping to definitely see you again live. I'm friends with Jared Fritz. I'm sure you're very familiar. So he had sent me a message and said you guys were taping in Tennessee, and
Correct.
It took everything for me not to take a day off and be like, I'm going to Tennessee. Like,
you know, we're going to be there on November 4th, right? It's a Saturday.
So November 4th, I promised my kids I would take them to the Ren Fair. It's the only free weekend I have in November. So I got to take care of my boys.
Welcome to a wrestling show.
Oh, I take them to wrestling all the time. That's my dad did it to me, and now I'm blessed enough that I get to take my dad still at 75 years old. He comes to all the events with us, and I take my boys. So definitely a multi-generational family that goes to watch wrestling when we go out. Yeah.
Well, we'll let it slide once.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure I'll see you again for sure. So, all right. So I'm going to tag out, and I'm going to let Angel ask you some questions.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we just have a few questions we like to ask everyone. I'm actually going to start with this one, considering the NWA connection there. Do you have a Ricky Morton story you would like to share with us?
Ooh, so Ricky Morton is, he's a character. From the time he wakes up to the time he goes to bed, he is a complete character. He always makes me laugh because he and my mom are super duper close. I'll be in the middle of doing God knows what at a wrestling show, and he'll come up and be like, how's your mom doing? And like, to anybody else, I can imagine that would be very uncomfortable if an older gentleman comes up and they're like, hey, how's your mom doing? Or he'll hit me with I was with your mom last night, because he'll be at like an event with her on the previous night. And he'll always tell me about it. But he'll always come up in the middle of God knows what and just be like, I was with your mom last night. And I'm like, oh, cool. I know he's talking about a wrestling show, but the audience that I'm with is not always aware that my mom is Baby Doll. So it's like, they look at me like, is Ricky Morton like your stepdad, or like what's going on with that? I'm like, no. Like, my mom's Baby Doll. Like, it's completely fine. It's PG. It just comes across so wrong. But it's funny because I got to watch his son, Kerry, grow up. I've known Kerry since he was just absolutely tiny, like knee high, running to the ring in his little moto gear, because he used to come to the ring with his father and would have like the bandanas around his knees and like super duper excited and just run as fast as he can. So our families have always been super entwined. So the stories are just, they're wholesome stories. They're not anything crazy. Ricky's a professional. He's entertaining. He genuinely cares about pro wrestling and keeping a very solid lineage and a good reputation. So he's wild, he's out there, and he's a hell of a worker. He's a good guy.
Excellent. I think that might be my favorite Ricky Morton story. Just him saying, I was with your mom last night. Like, no context, yeah. Ricky Morton. That's funny. Our next question is, what is your go-to place to eat when you're on the road?
Do you want the dieting answer or do you want the real answer? Because they're two completely different things. Pro wrestling, we're entertainers, we're athletes. We have to look our best. We have to be dedicated. We have to, maintain a strict diet because what we put into us fuels us, all that jazz. Heard a million stories. Still love Taco Bell. Sorry. Taco Bell and cake, my two biggest weaknesses. Whenever I'm on the road, typically I haven't eaten like a solid meal that day because I get super like excited and jittery and nervous. So instead of being able to like down some chicken and some rice before a match, I normally go like empty stomach because otherwise I'll puke on people, and we just don't want that. So normally I'll fast the day of a show just to be on the safe side. So if I'm traveling with my husband, we normally stop at a place like Denny's because my husband's like huge. He's just jacked. He's got like his muscles have muscles. So he's like, no, drive-thrus aren't going to do it for me. I was raised on the fact that, hey, you got to get your ass home. So pick up what you can, whatever's open, stop, get something, and get back on the road. And he's like, oh, no, let's take 2 hours and sit and drink coffee at Denny's in the middle of the night. I'm like, drives me up a wall because all I'm thinking about is we got to go. Like, we've got to make up this time. We've got 5 more hours on the road. I want to get home and get to sleep in my bed. I don't want to sit at Denny's for 2 hours just being casual and just enjoying the trip. Like, no, this is a business. Let's go. So if I'm with my husband, our go-to is definitely like Denny's because they're open 24 hours. They have a variety, and he normally orders 2 entrees. Just, I'm gonna throw his business out there like that. He no matter where we go, he orders 2 entrees. That's the typical. I'm such a fan of Taco Bell. I just born and raised in Texas, and then my mom's a huge Taco Bell fan as well, so it was like our go-to. And even now, like, you can't beat the nacho cheese. It's always hot. It always tastes the same. Over so many years, they haven't changed the recipe, so it's like this comfort food for me. It's like warm and it's cheap. That's my go-to. That's my guilty pleasure. Don't tell my trainers.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, also a big fan of Taco Bell. And you're right about the cheese. There's something about that cheese. It's so comforting.
It's magical.
It is magical, for sure. Our next question is a 2-part question. So we just want to know, who was your first favorite wrestler and who's your favorite wrestler now?
Oh, throwing favorites out there. I'm going to tell on myself. Whenever I was younger, I was living in Texas, so I was younger than 4th grade. And I was watching wrestling, and I guess I was a natural heel at a younger age, but you know how like sibling rivalries work. The Rock came on television, and let me preface, my sister was born in North Carolina. I was born in Texas. So I knew that at a young age, and it was my moment to shine. So The Rock was on television, and he grabs the mic. And he does the whole, do you smell right? And he says, everybody from North Carolina is trash. And I look at my sister and I said, yeah, everybody from North Carolina is trash. And my mom never let me watch wrestling at a young age again because that was not the reputation that she wanted me to have. And I also grew up during like the Attitude Era where they were pushing the limits, and it was bra and panty matches, and it wasn't the women's wrestling that it is today. And she didn't want me at such a young age to think of her in that sense of, oh, my mom did all this raunchy stuff. She was half naked on television every day. What she did was very different, and she couldn't explain that to me at a young age. So she was like, I'll keep her away from like what's on TV, the main product. And she exposed me to independent shows. So one of my favorite wrestlers whenever I was younger was Missing Link. And when I tell you younger, it was like I was probably 11, maybe a little bit younger. But I watched him versus Abdullah the Butcher. It was one of the first events I had ever seen live. It's the first one that I actually remember seeing. And of course, Abdullah did the fork, and like everyone was bleeding, and there was chains, and Missing Link was not he was not a young buck. Like, he was not a kid at this point. Like, this man was a grown, like, grandfather age to me. He was so sweet to me though. And he was like, he didn't know me from anybody else. Like, but before the match, he was just very like kind and very just, you know, like, he wanted to hang out with me, and I thought that was really, really cool. And then I watched him in the bloody mess, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is horrible. Like, I don't like hardcore matches. I don't want to see people bleed. I turn my head whenever I'm watching television and someone's like bloody. I just don't like it. So Missing Link would probably be, as my younger self, like my favorite wrestler, just because of who he was. And then whenever I started getting older and I was able to watch mainstream product, Randy Orton stole my heart. He just did. I don't know what it was about him. I guess it's typical bad boy. Like, he was always in a pretty decent shape. He wasn't like overly jacked, but he wasn't like scrawny. He had a really good build his entire career. And doing the Viper and like the hearing voices, it just, between his character and his personality, just had me hooked. I always thought he was like incredibly entertaining, just very good in the ring, technical wrestler. We have the 3rd generation thing in common, so it was just like an instant bond. So Randy Orton became my favorite, and I still absolutely love all of his matches. I know he's out due to injury. He may never wrestle again. That's the rumor. not confirmed, but he's had a hell of a career and he's changed so many people's lives. Very different from like the original favorite. So where I progressed to.
Yeah, well, that's part of why we asked that question, is because, depending on when you started watching wrestling, like if a lot of people started, a lot of the wrestlers we talked to, they watched wrestling as a kid, and the person you're drawn to when you're younger is not necessarily your favorite overall once you get older, and know more about it. So yeah, that's why we asked that. Those are great answers. And yeah, I've only been watching wrestling a couple of years, but I was also drawn to Randy Orton like the first time I saw him on TV. Even though like he's 30 plus years into his career now, I still thought he was amazing, and I do miss seeing him on a regular basis. So yeah, we're gonna keep our candles lit that he can come back eventually. But we'll see.
Yes, and when you were mentioning your husband, like so since we were on Facebook, I saw pictures of him and I was like, that dude is a monster.
Yep.
Like
he's insane.
I could imagine his workout routine is pretty rough.
You know what? You know what irritates me more than anything in the world? This man goes to the gym 3 days a week. 3 days a week. For roughly 45 minutes each session. This man, I don't know. I don't know when he made a deal with the devil, but this man did. He is walking proof that he did. Every night, he eats a full box of cereal. Not the small size, not the little $3 box. I mean the large or the family size or the mega size if he's super hungry. But he'll eat an entire box of cereal. Not healthy cereal, not Honey Nut Cheerios, not what is it? Wheaties? No, this man is eating Fruity Pebbles, Captain Crunch, Fruit Loops with marshmallows, like the junk cereal that your parents say, no, it's going to sugar you all up. You can't have that. He eats a full box with 2% milk every single night. Every night. And it's not like, it's like that's his guilty pleasure and he eats really strict the rest of the time. This man, it's just... I can't understand it. I don't get it.
Well, at his size, that's a lot of muscle to feed, right? So he's definitely eating big meals, I'm sure.
He eats roughly 6,000 calories a day.
Makes sense.
6,000, yeah. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And how he can turn whatever he eats into muscle, have no idea. Have no idea.
Yeah, he's definitely genetically gifted. I envy a lot.
Yeah, he sounds like one of God's favorites.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would love to eat a whole box of cereal. That's exactly why I don't keep cereal in my house, because I can't just have one bowl of it. So I could see how that would frustrate you. Just watching him eat cereal, and it's fine.
Apps are made in the kitchen, and his are just made out of Kellogg cereal.
Our next question is, who is your favorite person to wrestle?
Ooh, that's a good question. I've had so many different opponents throughout my career because I started wrestling whenever I was only 14 years old. Just through time, that's insane to think about. Currently, it's Kenzie Page. I'll be honest. Kenzie is she's a little firecracker. I've watched her over the past couple of years as she's progressed from like brand new green rookie to NWA Women's World Champion. And I admire her dedication and the amount of time and effort that she's put into her career, because there's a lot of people that will hit a certain level. They'll hit a certain level and then they'll stop pushing. They'll stop that drive. They're not as hungry because they get comfortable. And that fire that burns inside of her has not even begun to dim. It's just insane to see how much dedication and drive that young woman has, because she's 21, 22, like she's a baby. Like this isn't like it's okay, well, your career's about to end, give it all you've got. No, she's just getting started and she's tearing down the house everywhere she goes. So far, I've had 2 title shots against her and she's come out victorious both times, both for NWA one was for the NWA Women's Television title, the other was for the NWA World Women's Championship, and she's gotten the best of me twice now. I'm going to continue wrestling her until I beat her, because each time I go against her, I learn something new about her. I learn one of her little dirty tricks. Like I learn something to take advantage of in the next go around. So getting closer and closer to taking one of those titles off of her.
Excellent. Yeah, I was when you were talking, I was like, yeah, you just recently challenged for the title, didn't you? Like, it wasn't that long ago.
I was Kenzie's first title defense. So she beat Camille for the title at NWA 75 Night 2 and turn around, and I'm her first title defense. So that was a pretty cool moment for me. I would have loved to come out NWA Women's World Champion. It just wasn't in the cards. So just got to keep my head down, keep pushing, keep driving, even if it means doing cardio at 11 o'clock at night in a public park by myself. Don't tell my mother because she doesn't know that part. But yeah, you got to do what you got to do to get that leg up on the opponent. So
our final question is, if you could only watch one wrestling match for the rest of your life, what match would that be?
Oh, I thought the first question of the night was the hard one. Okay, I've had several concussions, so give me a second. I think I would have to pick the Royal Rumble of 1992. I think it was January 19th of 1992. It was the first time that a championship was on the line. So the winner won the vacated World Heavyweight Championship. And the amount of star power that they had in that match, from Ric Flair to Jake the Snake to Randy Savage to Sid Justice. And not only that, you had like the referees were also legendary referees now. You had Earl Hebner in there. Just from top to bottom, the match was over an hour long. Flair entered in as number 3 and ended up going the distance and eliminating Sid Justice at the very end because he got cocky with Hogan, and Flair was able to throw him out to win the vacated WWF World Heavyweight Championship. And I think that with the amount of talent that was in the ring, there's always something new that you're going to catch. It's not like you're going to watch it and be like, oh, I remember this, and oh, I saw that spot. Like, no, like every time you can focus on a different competitor and see something new every time. The length of the match, I'll have over an hour long of entertainment to be able to watch and be able to break down. And then just the story it told from beginning to end is incredible to me.
That's awesome. You're the first person to name a Royal Rumble as their favorite match. Yeah, we've had a lot of WrestleMania matches from different WrestleManias mentioned on previous episodes. But yeah, you're the first person to mention a Royal Rumble match. And I have not seen that one. So I'm going to go check that out. Yeah,
just
that sounds really
prepared.
awesome.
Bring snacks because the match lasts a long time. But it's a really good match just from beginning to end. And if you didn't know, whenever Hogan was eliminated, the crowd actually erupted. Like live, the crowd erupted. Like they were happy that Hogan was eliminated. And due to editing and people going back in and tweaking to control the feelings of the match, they actually edited out the real crowd reaction to replace them, because they wanted to tell a different story in the long run. So there's even a lot of like drama behind the scenes with the match. So I think it's really cool to incorporate that in there.
That's awesome. That sounds so interesting. I'm definitely going to have to check that out after this is over. All right. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with us. What we like to do now is we like to give you an opportunity to promote anything that you have upcoming and just let people know like where they can find you online.
So the upcoming matches I have are going to be November 17th in Sarasota, Florida, and then November 18th in Tampa, Florida for NWA, as we bring it all the way back to Tampa Bay. And you can follow me on Instagram at Perfect Knockout, and Facebook. You can look up Samantha Starr, or I think it's facebook.com/3G Samantha Starr. Get it? Third generation 3G. Hey, but now we're on 5G, so I guess I'm a little behind the times. But there's where you can follow me. If you'd like to purchase this shirt to help support me, I have prowrestlingtees.com/Perfect Knockout. I believe I have 2 different shirt designs up there right now. Potentially a third one coming out soon. So I would love for the support.
That's
awesome.
Great.
That was all I had, Danny.
Yep. So that really wraps us up. I do know your husband's a wrestler too, right?
He is.
Yeah. And what is his name?
So his name is Bosworth, but it's been shortened. He had one match in the NWA. They want to shorten it to Boz. But he's wrestled for roughly 20 years. He was trained by the Harley Race at the Harley Races Academy in Missouri. He was actually one of Harley Race's pallbearers at his funeral. So
man,
cool moment for him. Sucks Harley passed, but it was also one of like the paying respect for all the work that Dustin did do, because Dustin actually lived in the house with him to be like a live-in caregiver for Harley. So he went through the ringer with it, but wrestled for 20 years. He's been all over the country. He was also on the second season of Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Ranch Challenge. He did not go into it to win. He went into it for exposure, which he got. The man does not know what cardio means. No idea what that word means. He is athletic for looks, not for actual agility. So the first competition, blew it out of the water. Second competition was flipping, I think it was like a 200-pound tire up a hill, and he got gassed out. You can see he was just, and he might tell you this. In between the first challenge and the second challenge, they had a couple hours because they had to go and set up the next shoot and all the TVs and everything. This man ate 2 full pans of banana pudding in catering before the second challenge in the middle of summer in the heat at Stone Cold's ranch in Texas. So you can imagine how hard that would be to just keep that down.
That makes me feel ill.
Yeah. Oh, he did too.
I saw his NWA, like where he was Boz, and I was like, I feel like I've seen this dude before, and I couldn't put it together. But yeah, so he was a lot of independent, like a whole lot independent before then, right?
A whole lot of independent. He's done a lot with WWE as like extras, and he went on the road with them for I think 2 months doing like different matches with them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, 20 years. I'll definitely set up some time. Like I'll message you about getting him on here. I would love to have him on here because yeah, I'm a mark for like the really big. When I was in high school, my goal was to like look like your husband and look like the other big guys. It's definitely a tough endeavor. After I figured out what all needs to be done, I was like, I don't think I have that hard of a drive. So I always just went for, the mass. Like, there's no way I'm getting a 6-pack, especially not now. But yeah, I commend those guys for like, putting it away like that, man. Like, it's amazing. So.
It's insane to watch.
I just want to appreciate you again for your time. Thanks for coming on here and giving us some fun stories. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, not a problem. Have a great night.
You too.
All right.